Welcome to my house. I'm going to watch a Doctor Who story nominated by a friend of mine. I've asked them to tell me what it is they love about it, and I have to guess what their favourite things are.
Hi Toby, my name is John Cooper and I'm a comedian and illustrator. The story I've chosen is Time Flight.
Well, another day, another night, another Doctor Who commentary. So I hope you've got part 3 of Time Flight ready. I've got remote, I've moved my Blu-ray player, we're good to go. Press play now. It's still not much for muchness, is it? Well, welcome to part 3 of Time Flight. It's nice to be back. I needed to get a kip the other night. I like this title sequence now. I didn't at the time. I thought it was too literal. I thought it didn't suggest time, it just suggested space. I thought the font was too modern. It's still not my favourite, I don't think. I think it's more self-consciously of its time than some of the previous title sequences, or maybe they're just older so therefore seem more timeless, which might not make sense, but I think it does ultimately. I prefer the sort of time travel-y, abstract-y. I love the work of Bernard Lodge, but I doff my cap to Sid Sutton. It's actually a very beautifully rendered title sequence, and I do like the Howl theme tune. I was having a conversation with somebody today. It's something to do with Doctor Who being part of our childhood. I know some of you would have come to it differently, and I apologise for that. But I think how we find Doctor Who is very important to sort of how we appreciate it. I think the reason it speaks to so many people is because we associate it with our childhood, and if our childhood was a happy place, it's reminiscent of that. If our childhood was slightly more difficult, it was a haven within that. And childhood I've found quite scary, and now I look back on it and realise that actually it was the safest time. You know, it was emotionally, you know, you're sort of protected from various things, or certainly practically you are. And so I'm nostalgic for a time I actually didn't find particularly easy, which sounds like a paradox, but it's not. Anyway, the Master, who dresses as a baddie, but it's gorgeous, that velvet, isn't it? But he wasn't going to be a plumber dressed like that. But I remember this being a really exciting development. And John chose it for his thing. I was so excited that the Master turned up, even though I'd found him a very uncomfortable watch in Logopolis, because he was that sort of disembodied laugh. I didn't like it, and that's the point. They are whiz, aren't they? Apparently there was wasn't there I'm referring to the Captain Stapley and the airline crew, but I think there was a sort of chaperone. There was a British Airways or a Heathrow Airport bunch to ensure that they maintained the standards of, you know, the crew. Otherwise, the cooperation of Heathrow would not be as forthcoming, or was dependent upon, you know, them not. I think one of them was supposed to refer to the passengers as punters, and that was taken out. Although I can well imagine, you know, you would call your if you're in the service industry, well, even as comedy clubs, we talk about punters all the time, but that's slightly different. But that's a colloquialism. You'd probably be a company would, I think, now would allow for a bit more of a warts and all depiction. I think, I don't know. It's a very different beast from Earthshock, isn't it? It's like it's a different show, and a different show from Black Orchid, a different show from Kinder, a different show from The Visitation. I think I rather thought Doctor Who was a bit sort of samey, apart from Earthshock, which stood out at this time. But of course it wasn't. I mean, the colour palette is the same. I always think of the Davison era as quite beige, which is not the most dynamic of colours. But you know, I wanted aliens invading Earth and UNIT blowing things up, and I had people wandering around catacombs, and you know, I think I was hoping perhaps a dinosaur would turn up at this time period as well. Oh no, Judith Byfield as Angela Clifford. Gosh, both of these people. Nigel Stock, I think, was dead within 4 years of making this. He's 62. And Judith Byfield, I think, had died by the end of the 1980s. Certainly very, very young. Terribly sad. I actually have forgotten this scene. This is lovely, where the Doctor and Professor Hayter essentially go, "Yeah, this guy's going to explain it to you." Nigel Stock is very good. He was a terribly good actor. He was in a thing called ONMD. He had his own series, wasn't he? And The Great Escape, I know. Forgive me if I repeat myself from the last episode I did. It was 2 days ago. It's a cheek, isn't it? I have the audacity to sit down with people to watch an episode of Doctor Who there in 35 years ago. Go, what do you remember of this? I actually can't remember what I told you. What? The night before last, was it? I think I did. Well, you don't know. It was. I don't think I did it last night. I think I did it the night before. I'm currently recording in the time of coronavirus. I'm sure by the time that this reaches you, that will be long into the distant past, and that we will be plague-free and happy to go around, jumping on buses, eating out, earning a living and licking strangers' eyeballs. But for now, I'm trapped inside, watching and trying to recapture the childhood joy. I did like all of these characters when I was younger, and I do think Richard Easton is especially good. I mean, they are of a type. They are sort of jolly. And Rich, yeah, I think I've mentioned the brothers, haven't I? And the fact that it's a programme that only exists because Doctor Who fans know of it, because everybody from it. The brothers and the Pallisers, I think, essentially were the DNA that created the cast lists of John Nathan Turner's early Doctor Who. Just goes to show, be nice. Well, I mean, I would be anyway, but I know a lot of actors who aren't. Be nice to the crew, even the supposed that there's no. I'm not using this word because it's one that I would use, but the lowlier members of the crew, because one day they'll be the producer and might just give you a job. And I do sometimes fantasize. And I have been able to cast things, but you sometimes go, yeah, he was nice to me, I'll give them a job. They were not so nice. And they're the ones, of course, that the producer wants. But yes, poor old Judith Byfield, she does the Tannoy voice as well in the airport. But yeah, she died. She can't have been, well, she would have been younger than me. Although I'm recording this on the day that Ian Marter was born and died. He died on his birthday, and he was 42, which is younger than I am now, which I don't know what it is about me. I'm sorry about that. I do bang on about the dead. I think I've mentioned it before in commentaries as to why, but I imagine the exciting lives these people led, and I liked what they did. I liked the fact that they came into my home and transported me to other worlds, and I particularly liked actors who I'd see in one thing being very, very different in another thing. I always thought of that as a great skill. Now it's actually a bit of a drawback as an actor, because people like you to be the same. I can do all sorts of accents. Yeah, we know people who can actually just were born with the accent, so don't worry about any of that acting, mate. And of course, Nigel Stock, I think, has a stick-on beard, whereas today I think you'd pretty much be expected to grow a beard or have a beard, but it was much more theatrical, and our eyes were used to theatricality in a way. This is very much, you know, almost three walls with the audience looking on. But Nigel Stock was in The Great Escape, and he did serve in the war. I've just written another podcast for my other series, Indefinable Magic, about the war records of various Doctor Who actors, and I mentioned Stock because he's in The Great Escape, which is one of the finest films ever made, a Christmas regular, which has in it William Russell, who has some decent bits to do, and Tom Adams from Warriors of the Deep, and Angus Lenny from The Ice Warriors and Terror of the Zygons. It's a wonderful film, The Great Escape. Donald Pleasance's wonderful performance, and Nigel Stock, I think he actually did hurt himself. There's a bit where he jumps onto the bed, but the planks have been removed by Steve McQueen because he's using the planks to shore up the tunnel. And so he jumps on the bed and the planks aren't there, and he falls through the bunk. The mattress falls through the bunk. And I think Stock actually did break his arm, or certainly hurt his collarbone or something when he did that scene, which is really painful, but in the end makes for an anecdote. That's all you really want. I like the red lighting there on Keith Drinkle. And I quite like the fact that Bilton and Scobie, who could have been a bit interchangeable, split up and get to do different bits, so that they therefore have their own sort of distinct slice of the action. And I remember very much being on Scobie's side because he was wandering around with a moustache. I always liked a moustache. I don't know why. I've never been able to grow a particularly robust one until relatively recently, and now I can actually taste mine, so it needs a trim. Now, I've never quite understood the plot of Time Flight, but obviously this is what it centres around. There's the Zerafin, who, as I think I said before, their dominance of the sort of storyline isn't matched by their presence in the story, where they crop up in a bit to do a bit of chat, and that's all we see of them. So they're much more sort of talked about than seen for a bunch of creatures after whom the story was originally named. Oh, and yes, that's brilliant, isn't it? Because we actually saw them doing it, but I remember that being really a very claustrophobic idea, because there's no door, there's no way to get out. The wall has been put back, and I'm quite claustrophobic. I sometimes have nightmares about being locked in places, and I find that quite creepy. The idea that, oh God, we're now in a place and we can't get out. Oh yes, and this was really big news in the story, because he sent them off. He sends them off in the TARDIS, and you know that they've got to get back for the story to work. But that means that you know that they're going to do something heroic. And I quite like it when guest characters, under their own steam, they're not even with a companion. These two get to sort of take a part of the story themselves and do something that involves a bit of pluck and a bit of invention. I like that. I was always very interested in the new people that came in, and in a way less so about the main characters, because I almost took them for granted, which is probably why I've interviewed as many Vord as I have companions. That's not a figurine. That is a. I'm not sure it's wise to say that the shrunken corpses look like figurines, because often that's how they are rendered. Doctor, this looks like an action man. No, it's a shrunk corpse. But stop saying it looks like an action man, because that is supposed to be a body, isn't it? That's supposed to be a Zerafin body. Now, come on, Professor Hayti, you're supposed to be a scientist. So yes, it is. It's a corpse. What a horrible idea. You're holding a dead body, Doctor. Not a dapple Zerafin or whatever. It looks more like an Oscar, actually. It's the alien Oscars. So yes, I'm not. Oh, it's moving up and down the thing in the middle of the sarcophagus. But as I say, there's a lot of sort of chatter. I'm not entirely clear about it. That's simple, isn't it? That gives the impression that Bilton and Scobie are. No, it's not a helicopter. What? And I like the way they call it TARDIS, like they've been watching 60s Doctor Who. And Grimwade was busy, wasn't he? Peter Grimwade, who wrote this, directed the previous story, Earthshock. And as a very, very good director, with great visual flair, I saw interviews with him later where he was quite testy about the renditions of some of the things that he'd imagined. So I can only imagine how this differed from what he might have felt he would have done with it. But I do feel a bit for Ron Jones because he's saddled with the end of season when the money's run out. And this is the... Oh, of course, this is... Yeah, the Seraphim have been nice. Yeah, we're going to come and chat, but we will kill your very young friend. So sorry about that. I think it's a flaw. It's a flawed communication system. But it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because Professor Hayter sacrifices himself, which is quite a brave thing to do. But he, even when he sacrifices himself, he's an arse. Because he's basically going, no, young lady, I shall save you because I'm an old man, although I'm actually much older than I look because I'm only in my early 60s. But instead what he goes is, I'll get lots of knowledge. Yeah, but you will die. Doesn't matter, I'll know things. Yeah, it's not a terribly convincing argument. No, but it is one in keeping with my character, a slightly annoying scientist. I do like that effect, though. I mean, I know you can do that fairly easily now, but I remember working a work experience. I worked at a place that had a video editing machine, and you could press buttons that made it do that. But I still think it's neat. It does the job, and the sort of black and yellow is quite striking. And yes, this was great. Oh, yes. Oh, come on, Angela. It's just as trying as a New York stopover. And it's interesting that's there's an actor who knows where the camera is because he's having to sort of grip her and look her in the eye, but whilst not turning his back on the camera that's on him because it's also got her face. Very good camera technique, Keith Drinkle. And he turns a bit more of himself to camera in Zygon, the spin-off. It's not even porn. That's the thing about Zygon. It's not even porn. It's a sort of thriller with a bit of flesh in it. It's very it's a testament to the crazy world of Doctor Who that it exists. Yeah, that's. She's got very, very 80s hair, isn't it? It's like hair that you can sort of lift off, like Lego hair. Oh no, she's succumbing again, Roger. Oh dear, I've never noticed the bubble bath on Professor Hayter's skull before. That's quite grim. But it's good at grim little touches like that, 80s Doctor Who, that just made you feel like they were trying. Now, Anithon of the Brace of the Seraphim. I love the sort of cracks that they've got in there. It's a very simple effect, isn't it? It's two actors in sort of leotard one pieces with a bit of CSO colouring on them, but that crack suggests some sort of entropy affecting the Seraphim race. And Anithon of the Seraphim, because what I quite like is that they're called Anithon and Zarak, aren't they? They're the sort of, and Anithon is the good one, and played by Hugh Hayes here, and Zarak is the bad one. So they run the whole gamut of good to bad from A to Z. So presumably there's one called sort of, I don't know, Martin, who's pretty much straight down the middle. He's neither good nor bad, But Banatak and Canathon, B and C, they're pretty good. They're not as good as Anathon, but they're quite nice. Whereas Steve and Tim, towards the end of the alphabet, they're rotters. Now Hugh Hayes, I met. I will never forgive myself for this. He was playing Horatio to the Hamlet of Nabil Shaban, and we went to see it, and he was a very funny, witty Horatio. I remember a touch now I don't think I'd let anyone get away with, where he comes in and says, "I am here, my lord," and has a pretend ear. But it had this sort of joshing banter that he had with Nabil Shaban's very good Hamlet, and it was a really good and interesting production. And we hung around afterwards, me and my friends, to get their autographs. But I hadn't, and I was pretty good with actors' names, but I hadn't. I think Time Flight wasn't massively on my radar, and I didn't recognise the name Hugh Hayes, but it said Doctor Who in his biog. So we'd got our books for Nabil Shaban to sign, and so my friend got Hugh Hayes to sign his book. And I think I just got Hugh Hayes to sign my programme and not my book, whereas I've got guest actors to sign my books loads since. And as they were going, he sort of looked at me as if to say, "Do you want me to sign your book?" And I sort of did, but it was almost too late, although he was perfectly willing. So it was me that was... It's like when I do it now. If somebody offers me a cup of tea and I want a cup of tea and they're happy to make a cup of tea, I'll still, for the sake of politeness, go, no, thank you, don't want a cup of tea. So I was going, no. So I didn't take the opportunity that he gave me for him to sign my book, so I don't have Hugh Hayes. And we'd said to him, "What were you in Doctor Who?" And he said, I ended up being banished by the Master. So we worked out who they were, who he was, and he remembered he was called Anathon because he signed that on my friend's book, where it presumably is still inked, and where there was a big empty gap on mine. It's and Zarak is quite mean. He's got a good voice. Andre Winterton, he's called. I remember him being in an episode of Howard's Way, but it's based that the Doctor and this Regan are basically watching an alien race have a row with itself. It's a sort of curious moment, but the idea is a sound one of this sort of balanced race and the baleful influence that is doing whatever. How can he help? What's he supposed to do? Press tag? Start doing some wrestling? Right. So there's a sort of psychic battle that goes on, but it's quite a binary idea, that though, isn't it? Is that there are good Seraphim and there are bad Seraphim, I think we would. Well, no, I don't know how I feel about that. But they render it very well. The two characterizations are do the job. I like the cracks, although in this cleaned up Blu-ray, I can see where the cracks are sort of not stuck on completely flush. And this is great because the sarcophagus has gone. No walls, and they're trapped. They're very good at cliffhangers like this in the Davison era, where they're just like, right, something's happened. We have to get the Doctor to say what it means. At the end of Mordred Undead will be the end of me as a Time Lord. I've got no idea why, but I'm going with it because Peter Davison said it, and I believe him. Oh, Nigel Stock gets credited before Anthony Ainley. That is interesting. Probably only to me, but because Ainley's sort of considered part of the regular cast, and I know Peter Wingard is credited before him as well. I think Peter Wingard's credited before everybody in Planet of Fire, apart from Peter Davison. I had forgotten that Nigel Stock trumps Ainley. Well, there we go. That was episode 3. Oh, and because it was the other day when I did this, I need to call up. I don't think I still have John in my music, so I need to call up John Cooper to see what is his what are his favourite things. Hang on, where's John? Oh, I need to pause. Sorry. So before I play what John has chosen, I'm going to choose the idea that they get trapped inside that sarcophagus, and there's no purchase, there's no levers, there's no door, and indeed the cliffhanger is that they end up trapped inside there. But I find that idea that you get, they take ages trying to get inside a place, which is really hard to penetrate. But then once you're in there, if somebody takes away the hole that you used to get in, the means of escape. I find that idea very claustrophobic. So that is my favourite thing about episode 3. Although I could have gone for the pilot's little subplot and all that sort of stuff, but I will go for that.
Episode 3 is Professor Hater, played by Nigel Stock, who is one of several hundred classic professors that knock around in Doctor Who, challenging him and then accepting his way, and then in this case, well, you'll find out what he does to himself. And the best thing about episode 4...
I'm not going to do that now, Johnny. So we'll line that up for episode 4. So, well, look, we are trapped in lockdown and we cannot escape. But unlike the Master, the coronavirus will not finally defeat us. So although we are now at the end of episode 3 and in a parlous state, I am confident we will all escape. And I hope you'll join me to have a bash at that. I mean, when I watch Time Flight episode 4, that doesn't mean I'm going to find a cure for the pandemic at the same time, but I will perhaps help to while away another 25 minutes under its thrall. And I hope you can join me then and there. But in the meantime, stay safe. Good night.
You can see me on stage as Danny Pensive, and I have a comic out at the minute called Distance, which is all about the crazy things and dark things that have been happening in the world since March. It's a strip that I've started. It's going on Kickstarter. You can find out more about it at johncooper.org.uk. Happy times and places. Bye bye.